Now, a question I thought I'd address was, how would I know that I wanted to marry somebody that I just met and couldn't even effectively, clearly communicate with? Why I, who had waited so long, would marry in this fashion. One was, and I kept saying that he was honest and sweet, which is true. One thing he would always talk about when we were in Hollywood was how he had respect for women. Now, I've heard that before, and it's even worked before. But no, he did. Of course, I wouldn't find that out till later, that that was really, really true, and that he really, really lived and thought that way and believed that way. Very strange. The other thing was just a detail that that person to person I like. When somebody would say something cruel, or there were just instances of just bad examples of how people are, he would always react genuinely shocked. Like he was like, how can anybody, that can't be true. How could anybody react that way? How could anybody act that way toward other people? And he was mystified and horrified by the bad things in human nature. And I was like, oh man. Because I'm like, you know, I'm like, I saw that coming. You know, and he was just like, no, nobody can act that way. You're not supposed to act that way. I was like, where are you from? So anyway, he shows up. He shows up to my dad's house on my birthday. And 2 days later, on the 42nd anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Pierre and I go down to the courthouse. We needed to bring a translator with us to the courthouse because we wanted to make sure that he knew what he was getting into. The woman asked him to, you know, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? And it just came out as one big sound. He was so petrified with fear that he just said to each question. So he was just mortified. So I said, well, listen, on the ceremony on Saturday, you just repeat the vows in French, because this is insane. You can't possibly, you can't stammer like that at the wedding. Okay, so we take care of the courthouse stuff on Tuesday, the 22nd. Then we have Thanksgiving. The next day is Pierre's birthday, and then on Saturday we had the wedding, and on Sunday I go back to LA and Pierre goes back to Paris. So on Saturday, Thanksgiving dinner was fabulous, incredible. So Saturday we have the wedding. I'm not going to go too much into that, simply because the wedding was perfect. Everything went, we had the great music, great house, great food, great cake, a great photographer, and everybody had a great time. The next morning, he goes back to Paris, and I go back to LA. And it's over. We leave in complete opposite directions, and I stay out the rest of my semester. And on December 17th, I left the United States permanently and arrived in Paris the next day. So I arrive at his apartment with my luggage. I walk into his living room, and this is the first apartment or house or dwelling that I've been in that had no books. The other thing was, there was no art in the house. And that was mystifying to me for several months. No art. The third thing I noticed was there was nothing in the apartment that wasn't useful. Meaning everything in the apartment that you could see was something that would be used every day. And that's very odd. It's unsettling. So, because in my apartment, and the places I lived, the house is almost entirely composed of things that are useless. Things that are not necessities, visibly, evidently not necessary for life, for survival. So I sat down on the couch and just began to live. The day I arrived, my husband began to accommodate all of my desires. His job, in his mind, was to completely accommodate me and make me happy. That was visibly the only thing that he cared about. For the first month, I slept. Because I have a new husband, which I never thought I'd have. He's a new person to me. He speaks a different language, so I cannot speak English. I'm in France, a country I never even dreamt of living in. Never had one fantasy about it. Everything that I have to do can only be accomplished if I know French. And with French, it just seems like, they have a different word for everything, so. I studied and studied and studied, and there were some days that I was so terrified because the time had gone by so quickly, the romance had happened so quickly, that I could only lay in bed and just stare at this man who was speaking rapid French to me, needing to know what I wanted, what would make me happy, and beginning to discover who he is. And I learned many things about him. And who he is was quite a surprise.